I mean, I think there's a couple important aspects to how Snøhetta thinks and works within design. And you're absolutely right. There's an interest in coming together across the different disciplines because we have people that have all kinds of different backgrounds and interests and study. They, architects, landscape architects, interiors, graphics, products, branding. We have all these different points of view. And there's sort of two ways that I think about it. One is that the idea is we do not set out to erase the distinction between, say, building and landscape. Maybe sometimes that is an outcome, but it's not the goal. The goal is actually to come together around a table, regardless of our discipline and background, and look for the ideas that are most interesting and compelling and innovative, and address the program, because every project has some function that we are very excited when we can create very functional, responsive responses that also embody beauty and interest and recognize the human experience. So it's about reducing a hierarchy in how we work. But the other thing I wanted to mention about the way that we're working that I think can sometimes maybe be misunderstood is that we really value and respect the knowledge that people build within their disciplines. So again, it's not to erase that, it's to work together. And then when we have an idea, then it's too much for, I think, any of us to be an expert in everything. So then we look to the disciplines of design that people have focused on and committed to and spend our lives trying to be good at, to really execute work in the highest possible way. So that focus is just as important as the collaboration. When we think about a concept or an idea that is driving a design, I think part of what helps us to come to somewhat unique solutions is that we don't rely on an idea being sort of directly translated. We rely on it as inspiration. So when we talk about concept design in a project, what is the concept or the way of thinking that's the inspiration or driving the thinking? The viewer may actually never, a participant when it's built, may never actually be able to tell you what that concept is, but it gives us the thread or the connection to work around. We're really interested in how you can open up greater access. So I think you start to see responses in both our architecture and our landscape that are about bringing people in and inviting people to participate. And so that often is maybe seen more as visibility inside the building or space outside that's intended to be place to occupy and play and inhabit, as well as the way that you get into a space. So I think those are some of the threads that if you look really closely that you can start to see through a commonality in the work. I certainly didn't know as a young person that I would be a landscape architect, but I commented earlier during our panel that I think it's been really helpful at different points in my career to look back at some of the experiences that really stand out throughout your childhood and your entire life, and you start to see these connections that you didn't know meant anything at the time that you were experiencing it. So when I was young, I grew up in a very rural part of northern Iowa, and I commented earlier that there's a lot of landscape, but not a lot of people. That meant that I spent most of my time, all of my free time, in outdoors, exploring, imagining worlds like any child does. But I started really making things in the landscape at a very young age. I think that connection to and that interest in shaping the land and just experimenting was this and is this deep connection that has actually been this thread through my whole career. I learned about landscape architecture after I went to undergraduate school. I hadn't I hadn't ever heard of it as a profession. There weren't a lot of recognizably designed landscapes in the area where I grew up. And so I was trying to figure out what I was interested in. And I had really, all through my youth and high school, I loved art. So I was always learning about art and making things. I learned about earthwork artists, which were just so incredibly powerful and inspirational to me, because they're making new experiences out of what they found, or introducing something very simple into the landscape. So when I learned about landscape architecture in college, it took a little while, but I started to find what the thread was between sort of art and beauty, and what draws us to places and connects us to places. And I also had this really strong curiosity and interest in urban environments and people, and how people interact with places that we make. And so, you know, as we all know, I didn't know then, but I figured out, like, oh, that is landscape architecture. And that is what we do, is we make these places that connect to people and history and stories and environment.